What's going on? Okay. Hi, Elaine. Good morning. Let's see what's going on over here. Facebook is live. Yes, Facebook is live. Good morning, Terry Zweig. Nice to see ya. And Stephanie Marmer. Not walking today, so we'll have coffee. L'chaim to you, Stephanie. I'm also having coffee. And, oh yeah, kind of rainy outside today. Makes sense. Hi, cousin Shmaya. Nice to see you. Today's Torah study is dedicated by Ron and Elaine Collins in honor of the reopening of our shul and in honor of the many birthdays celebrated remotely. Thank you, Elaine and Ron. We appreciate that very much. We do have morning minyan already active, 7:30 every morning, as well as on Shabbat. But you have to reserve for Shabbos. And that email information should be coming out today. Good morning, Mickey. Nice to see you again. Okay, I'm going to get started. We're going to study Talmud today. Yes, haircut. We're going to study Talmud in just a few moments. But before we do that, I'm going to start off with the Hayom Yom. Give us, our friends, some time to join us. Today's Hayom Yom is the 11th day of Sivan. I think it's the 11th day. Yep, it is the 11th day. 11th day of Sivan. Hayom Yom goes as follows. From my father's talks. This would be from the fifth Chabad Rebbe, the father of the author of Hayom Yom, the father of the sixth Rebbe. The avoda, the divine service of serving God, according to Chassidus, comprises all kinds of levels. There's all kinds of levels when it comes to serving God according to Chassidic philosophy. Hi, Helen and Warren. The level of corpse doesn't need much elaboration. You're talking about dead. There's no action here. It's just a dead horse. But thank God there is also the concept of the revival of the dead in divine service, spiritually speaking. A corpse is cold. There's nothing as frigid as natural intellect. Human intellect. It's just detached. It's objective. Your mind, you can objectively sentence a mother of many children to jail for a crime. It's just objective. It's heartless. When one's natural intelligence comprehends a godly concept, and the emotions latent in intellect are enthused and moved by the pleasure within intellect, that is the true revival of the dead. So what that means is that within our divine service, we can experience moments of death and moments of resurrection. If you're viewing something purely objectively, dispassionately, from a distance, arm's length, you could be studying something, meditating on something profound, and you're looking at it purely intellectually. That could potentially be a corpse approach where it's just dead. You're not connecting with that reality. You're removed. It's apathetic, lifeless. It's a lifeless connection. If there wasn't any intellectual understanding, if there wasn't any rational understanding, there would be no connection. But here you have a connection, you have a relationship with an idea, just that it's heartless. There is no emotion. And then when you evolve from your intellect into your emotion, when you go from understanding an idea to feeling the idea, now you've brought it to life. And this really, friends, is the idea that we've been learning about in Tanya yesterday, in our recent chapters of Tanya, which is chapters 29 and 30 of Tanya. I was meditating upon it this morning, and I was having some short circuits as my mind was just blown by the profundity of what we've been learning in recent days in Tanya. An idea like the understanding of what is evil, what is the pain which we struggle with, what is the ego within each of us, the ego that causes us to fight with other people, to create tension and discord between us in a marriage, for example. What Tanya is explaining to us, and I think this is just in a kernel, in a nutshell, is that ego is not real. It's just something which feeds off of you like a parasite, like a virus. And if you can shine the light on it, then it will literally become neutralized. It's a brilliant idea. So when you take an idea which is purely rational and you personalize it, you start to feel it, you're bridging the gap. You're going from Bina, understanding, to Das, which is feeling. And that is the resurrection of the dead in divine service. It's taking an idea and jumping over from cold, cool intellect into fiery emotion. And in other words, our divine service, our relationship with God is supposed to be alive. It's supposed to be alive. You're supposed to have a relationship with God which is on fire. Imagine you had your relationship with your spouse, which was just rational. Think about that. What kind of marriage would you have if you only had a rational relationship with your spouse? Well, yeah, we share taxes, so health insurance benefits, meals are cheaper when we eat together. So that's why we're married. We don't have much of a marriage going on. Obviously, you want to have an emotional, a vibrant, alive, feeling relationship with your spouse. Same thing with your God. If you're not feeling your relationship with your God, you're not doing it right. You're half alive. You're kind of dead. In the same way that you would look down upon someone whose marriage was purely rational. Think of your own marriage to God as purely rational. Do you have a very immature relationship with God? Or are you in an advanced relationship with God? That's what today's Yom Yom is about. It's about revival of the dead. It's about feeling the relationship as opposed to just understanding it. You can do this. This is what Chabad is about. Chachma bina das. Idea, understanding, and then feeling. And that's what we're learning in Tanya, how to bridge the gap between the understand, that which you understand, and that which you begin to feel. We do Tanya on Tuesdays. You can find those classes at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. And Elaine, indeed, that is the aha moment. It is the aha moment which you mentioned. You gotta, I wonder if it is the aha moment, because aha could be the chachma moment, the moment of idea, the burst of inspiration. That could actually be more correctly the aha moment. It's when you start to feel. It's not so much an aha, but it is an aha. So there is something to what you're saying. It's not as inspirational as the idea in the first place, but when you sort of get it, you're like, oh, that's what we're talking about. Aha. And that's why I want to agree with you. There is an element of aha here when you make it your own and when you really begin to chapzich, to grasp what you've understood all along. Marty, I think you need understanding and feeling. That's bina and das. That's understanding and feeling. That's chachma bina das. That is Chabad. You don't want to be a Chabad. You want to be a Chabadnik, right? Anyways, good morning to you, Marty. Let's see who else is joining us here on Facebook. Good morning to Bob Wertheimer, Miriam Lindner, Ronan Cohen, Adrian. Harvey Arnett is also celebrating his birthday, his bar mitzvah this week. And Harvey's been generous enough to dedicate a whole week of Torah study here. Thank you very much, Harvey, for dedicating this week in honor of the 64th anniversary of your bar mitzvah on Shavuos. Thrilled to be able to celebrate with you, even though you're already in Chicago. L'chaim to you, Harvey, and Mazel Tov. Welcome to Chana, Siegelstein, and Andy. Graciela, to Stuart Levitt, to Ed Hockman. Good morning, Stu. Good morning, Ed. Good morning, Graziella. And we're ready to roll. Fantastic. We're learning Talmud today. And it's a cool piece of Talmud. Let's see where we're up to exactly. It's a nice piece of Talmud, which is... Oh. Hang on a second. I'm just going to... I lost my place over here. Oh, come on. We're in this book, just to tell you, we're in the book Ein Yaakov, printed by Art Scroll Masorah Publications. If you don't have this book, you can call Ashley at the office and she can get one for you. So that's Ein Yaakov, it's the Eye of Jacob. Basically what this book is a collection of the stories of the Talmud. Great stuff, really a lot of fun to study the Talmud. We study it typically once a week on Wednesdays or Thursdays. And I'm getting close to finding my page because I'm learning in a different book today. Oh, yeah, I'm getting very close. 1 second. Here. Okay, we just finished the 5 love languages, and here we are. We're on to page 91, really. Page 91, again in this book, this is Ein Yaakov, the Eye of Jacob, a 15th century work which collects the stories of the Talmud, leaving out the legalities, the deep meditative, introspective, technical components of Talmud, leaving only the inspirational elements of Talmud. Okay, so here we are. We're on page 91. We're actually finishing up page 91. And what we did was, last time we studied this a week or two ago, you can find all previous Talmud classes online at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. And just search under the Talmud playlist. But what we learned over here was a fascinating element of the prayer of God. We're learning about how God prays. And that was a discussion that we learned in the last lesson of Talmud. And we left it off like this with a beautiful piece, which I'm going to review because it was so beautiful and it kind of leads into today's piece of Talmud. On page 91. If you have the book, if you don't have the book, just follow along with us. No pressure. Ein Yaakov. By the way, friends, if you're able to share this video on Facebook or on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube, like the video on Facebook, share the video on Facebook. It's going to be very helpful. You know, we recently gave a class this week. Khan and I gave a class on debunking the myths of Orthodox life, and we hit about 14,000 views because it was broadcast on the Chabad.org platform. And another class I gave last week on the JLI platform was, I don't know, another 4,000 or 5,000 views. That was because there's a lot of friends on those platforms. We're going to build up our viewership. So if you can help us share and like the video, maybe you could love the video. I don't know if you can do that. But if possible, they'll be very helpful for us to spread the word. We'd like to really build it up. And by the way, one thing I want to mention to you is that tomorrow we're having a radio show on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live at 2:45 p.m. Khan and I are doing AMA. It's Ask Me Anything, Ask Us Anything. And we'd love to get your questions in advance so we can prepare a fast-moving show, entertaining, on Ask Me Anything. A lot of people have been asking us for an AMA show, Ask Me Anything. So we encourage you. Now's your moment. Please send us your questions to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. Any questions you want. No holds barred with the Rabbi and Rebbetzin. We'd love to hear from you. So let's do this. Talmud, page 91. The Gemara cites a brisa about a prayer. Now this prayer is a prayer that God made. Let's take a look at the prayer that God made. A brisa told Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha, who was a priest in the second temple, said, one time on Yom Kippur, the holiest day, I entered the innermost chamber, the Holy of Holies, to burn the Ketores, the incense, as part of the highlight of the Yom Kippur service. One person, one place, one day. It's the high priest only on Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies. And in there I saw in a vision, Akasrikel Ko Hashem Tzavaos, which is a reference to God himself. I saw God, whatever that means, anthropomorphically speaking. He was sitting on a high and lofty throne. He said to me, Yishmael, my son, bless me. God asks the high priest to bless him. I said, Master of the universe, what kind of blessing are you going to give God? If God asks you to bless him, what would you say to God? I said, Master of the universe, may it be your will that your mercy will conquer your anger and that your mercy will overcome your stricter attributes, and that you will act toward your children with the attribute of mercy, and you will go beyond the strict law when dealing with them. Basically, you'll give us the benefit of the doubt. That's really what the prayer of the high priest was. The blessing of the high priest was to God. He then nodded his head to me in approval. This is stunning stuff. I mean, God asking for a blessing, then God nodding in it in approval. Obviously, none of this is physical. It's all anthropomorphic, as if answering Amen to my blessing. And we spoke a lot about this in the previous Talmud class. Now we're going to take it further. So if you just joined us, we're studying Talmud today. Good morning, Rob Berger. Nice to see you. We're studying Talmud. We're in the book Ein Yaakov, this one, published by Ascribing Emotions Publications. Ein Yaakov, the Eye of Jacob. It's a collection of the stories of the inspirational elements of Talmud. And we're on page 92 if you have the book. The Gemara teaches the lesson that may be learned from this incident. What does Rabbi Yishmael come to inform us? That the blessing of an ordinary person should never be unimportant in your eyes, because even God asked a mere mortal for a blessing. Never should the blessing of an ordinary person be considered unimportant in your eyes. Al birkas hedyet alti kala beinecha. Very important principle. Anybody that blesses you is valuable, is significant, is important. Rabbi Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Hanina, the blessing of an ordinary person should never be unimportant in your eyes. How do we know this? For we find that two of the most prominent men in their generation were blessed by two ordinary people. So we'll see now in a moment two holy people that turned to two ordinary people for blessings, and in each case the blessing was fulfilled for them. So don't discount your shmendrik neighbor. If he gives you a blessing, say Amen. You never know if that blessing is going to come true or not. Who are these two prominent men whose blessings from ordinary people came true? They were David, King David, and Daniel. Daniel, whose book Daniel was incorporated into the Tanakh, into the Torah, the written Torah. It's actually a very enigmatic book. It's written in Aramaic, and it's said to contain many, many secrets that we haven't even been able to fathom because it was written in such profound code. David was blessed by a king called Aravna the Yebusite. Aravna is the guy, king, whom David bought the field, a very important field from. You probably have heard of this field. It's called the Temple Mount. Probably the most hotly contested real estate in the history of the world was purchased by King David, Jewish king, king of Israel. Everybody knows that it was purchased by King David, yet today we still struggle with enforcing our authority over it. We have the title deed, but they won't give us a break. Probably because we never respected ourselves in asserting our ownership over it after 1967, after the 6-Day War. We gave it away unthinkably to those who attacked us, to those who threatened to destroy us. And Aravna said, as it is written, so what is the blessing? What happened over here in the story when King David bought the field from Aravna the Jebusite? It says, and Aravna said to King David, may Hashem, your God, accept you. We're going to study this in a moment. Daniel also was blessed by the Persian king Darius, as it is written, your God, whom you serve continually, he will save you. So two great men, David and Daniel, were blessed by two ordinary men. Now, when we say they were blessed by two ordinary men, in this world, they weren't ordinary men. They were kings. But in spiritual context, King Aravna was an ordinary person, and King Darius, the king of Media, and later on, well, the second Darius would have been Media and Persia, were also ordinary men in the spiritual context, okay? So let's take a look at what's going on over here. Why was David blessed by King Aravna? A plague had come upon the Jewish people, like we have today, a plague, coronavirus. There was a plague that had come upon the Jewish people. God the prophet told King David to build an altar on the threshing floor owned by a non-Jew Aravna. The threshing floor was the Temple Mount. David bought the threshing floor from Aravna, who blessed David, saying, "May Hashem, your God, accept you." Indeed, this blessing was fulfilled, and the plague stopped. So the plague ceased as a result of the blessing which was given by an ordinary person. Now, the second example was King Darius, who blessed King David. Who was this guy Darius? Interesting story. So there were two Dariuses. Darius the first and Darius the second. The first Darius was the first Darius was the king of Persia, who joined forces with Cyrus, the king of Media, and together they destroyed the Babylonian Empire. A mere 53 years, I think it was, after the destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar the Babylonian, after the destruction of our temple, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, nemesis of the Jewish people, his name was Belshazzar. He threw a crazy, wild party celebrating the death of the Jewish God. You may have heard this from me before. He was celebrating the non-fulfillment of the prophecy of Jeremiah, that after a certain time Jerusalem would be rebuilt. This King Belshazzar threw a crazy feast, and at the feast he brought out and he desecrated the vessels of the holy temple of Jerusalem, which his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had plundered. He dressed in the robes of the high priest, as if to mock the Jewish God. The Jewish God is dead. At that feast, you may have heard of the expression, "The writing is on the wall." A hand appeared on the wall and started writing. The words it wrote were in Hebrew, "Mene, mene, 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 tekel farasin," which basically Daniel was the one who interpreted to mean that Babylon is done. Babylon is about to end. The kingdom is over. And indeed, it was that night that King Belshazzar was beheaded and the Babylonian Empire was conquered by the King Darius, and the one who became his son-in-law, King Cyrus of Media. And together they took down the Babylonian Empire, never to rise up again. And they basically, their grandson was a king by the name of Achashverosh, of the Purim story, whose marriage to Esther led to the birth of Darius II, sometimes known also as Cyrus. It's a little confusing about how those names worked back then. But Darius II was a Jew, and he was the one that allowed the Jews to build the second temple, to rebuild the second temple after it was destroyed, as prophesied by Jeremiah the prophet. But it's a very beautiful, interesting history. It was Darius I that allowed the Jews to go back to Jerusalem, but that work was stopped, and it was later on that it was resumed by Darius II. In any event, you see the relationship here between Daniel and Darius. Daniel was the prophet of Israel. He was one of the exiles of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar the Babylonian, and he's the one that interprets the writing on the wall. He obviously prophesizes the conquest of Darius over Belshazzar, and a friendship is formed between Daniel and King Darius. Daniel is still alive in the story of Purim. He was the advisor who relayed messages between Esther and Mordechai. In any event, now we can understand the context of what we're about to learn, how a second ordinary person blessed a righteous person, and that blessing came true. So here it is. It's the Darius who blessed Daniel, and he said, "Your God whom you serve continually, he will save you." Darius said this when Daniel was cast into the lion's pit. That's another story when the advisors of the king of Babylon were jealous of the favor that the king had towards Daniel. and therefore they made a decree that everybody had to bow down to the king. Obviously, Daniel, as a Jew, refused to do so, to bow down. We only bow down to God. Whoever refused to bow down was, according to the decree, had to be thrown in the lion's pit. And that's what happened to Daniel. Daniel in the lion's den. We've all heard of the story. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, and the animals licked his feet. The lions licked his feet. So in Tanya, we learned that the reason why Daniel survived was because man is created in the image of God, and man is essentially, inherently elevated above the animals. An animal will not attack a human being if that human being is still in the image of God. If that human being is not sinned and hasn't violated the image of God in which he was created, animals can see the image of God and they will whimper before the human. However, a human that sinned has violated his image of God and now is descended to the status of animals, and animals see that human being as fair hunting game. And that's why, according to Tanya, Daniel was not attacked by the lions. But here in the Talmud, it gives a different interpretation. The Talmud is going to say now that the reason that Daniel survived the lion's den was because of the blessing of the ordinary person, because of Darius. And now we say, Shivim Panim LaTorah, there are 70 faces to the Torah. It's not a contradiction. You can have many explanations for the same truth, and all of them are concurrently true. Remember, you're dealing with the godly wisdom. It's not monolithic. It's not one way or the other. It's not binary. It's not black or white. There's many ways to look at divine wisdom, right? So what was the story? Certainly Daniel was not saved only because Darius' blessing. The verses clearly indicate that Daniel was saved because of his righteousness, as I just explained. However, by mentioning the blessing given by Darius, the verse teaches that it had significance and contributed to some degree to Daniel being saved. Similarly, the blessing of Aravna to David had some positive effect, even though the prophet God had instructed him, David, to build the altar so that the plague should stop. Both Aravna and Daryavish were kings. Nevertheless, in comparison to David and Daniel, who were the greatest of their generations, they were considered ordinary. Now, it's interesting. I'm just a little unclear about how it was that Darius that blessed Daniel when he was thrown in the lion's den, because that would have been under the Babylonian Empire. And I'm not sure how Darius was involved at that time in the picture. I would have thought that Darius got involved only when he conquered the Babylonian kingdom. So I'm a little unclear about exactly how that works. I'm working on it. But anyways, just wanted to express to you my own unclarity of that particular period of history. But whatever, it is a little confusing because the kings had different names, and kind of like the Pharaoh or like a Caesar. It was a name that was adopted when you became a monarch. So it's a little bit unclear about who ruled when exactly. But the general picture we got over here, hopefully. Anyways, so back to the Talmud. The commentary says here, a person should answer Amen even if a non-Jew blesses him, as it says, Baruch tiyeh mikol ha'amim in the Torah and Deuteronomy, which can be rendered, you'll be blessed by all the nations. So it's not only when a holy Kabbalist, a rabbi blesses you, but even if an ordinary person blesses you, you should say Amen. You know, you're going to the zoo and I don't know what, the person at the counter says, have a nice day, God bless you. Say Amen. Say Amen. Why not? Right? Hopefully the blessing will come true. You never know. And that is one thing that we learn from that story of the high priest meeting God in the Holy of Holies. You see, that story wasn't shared with us just for the sake of sharing with us, because that would have been boastful for the high priest to share with us that kind of a story. He's obviously coming to teach us something. If I can bless God, how much more so can an ordinary person bless any one of us? And how careful we have to be with watching our words. We need to be careful. Our words have tremendous power. Be careful with how you use your words. If you're angry, don't say bad words. And if you're happy, verbalize those words with a blessing. Did you bless someone that you love today? Go ahead and do it. And don't just wish it. Don't say, I wish you luck. Say, God should bless you with success in everything you do today. Amen. God should bless you with health. If you're a Kohen, Warren here is on this group. He'll often call me before Yantiv to give us a priestly blessing, especially during the quarantine, and we very much appreciate it. Because he's blessing us. We say amen. Thank you very much. This is very, very important. And I thank you for that, Warren. It's important to bless each other. To bless each other, that we wish upon each other God's blessing. Just to share with you a quick insight here. You may have heard of an ayin hara, a canine hara, which is the evil eye. What is the evil eye? Is it a superstitious thing? The way I teach it, it's not. An ayin hara, an evil eye, is when someone turns to God, complains to God about you. That's an evil eye. You're driving a Maserati convertible SUV, and your neighbor's eyes are seeing red, right? You stuck it in, you're flaunting. They turn to God and they say, God, why him? Why not me? And your verbal complaint can spark an audit up in heaven. That's the evil eye. That up in heaven, they'll say, well, let's open the books. And that's when they decide to audit you, God forbid. And nobody ever wants to be audited. You never, ever want to be audited. Because there's always stuff. So in heaven, if they start really looking closely at your book, they'll be like, well, maybe we shouldn't have. That's an evil eye. It's basically someone complaining to God about you. That's the power of our words, friends. The power of our words, the power of our speech. We have such tremendous power in our words. Our ability to speak is what defines us, according to the Kabbalah. What defines the human species is medaber, which means speaker. It also means leader. Speaker and leader in Hebrew is exactly the same word. Daber means to speak, and it means a leader as well. Yadber means to lead. Fascinating. Fascinating word. Because our speech paves the way to our reality. It leads the way to our reality. Change your words, and you'll change your world. What we're learning today in Talmud is the power of our speech. When an ordinary person blesses you, say amen. It came true in the days of David and the days of Daniel, and it can come true in your experience as well. The next piece of Talmud is about, I'm curious, by the way, if you have any comments, questions, or thoughts to share. I always love to hear from you folks on Facebook and on YouTube. Would love to hear your thoughts here, Facebook and YouTube. Please do share. The next piece of Talmud is about God's anger. Sorry, not God, God's anger and a human person's anger. Let's start this Talmud. Why not? We'll do it now. Okay, let's go ahead. We're on page 93 now in the Ein Yaakov. This is the book of Ein Yaakov, the commentary on Talmud. Okay, a second teaching by Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi, from where do we know that you should not try to appease a person while he is still angry? If someone is fuming, try to stay away. Anything you do while they're angry is probably going to backfire. Just stand back. Keep a safe distance. Let them blow it off. Let them erupt. And once the rage is calmed, that's when you can approach them. From when do we know that you should not try to appease the person while still angry? For it is written that Hashem said to Moshe, when he begged them to have mercy on the nation which had sinned with the golden calf, my face will go and I will give you rest. This means that the Holy and Blessed Be said to Moses, wait until the anger on my face passes. Don't talk to me now. And then I will give you the relief that you're seeking. Wow. So the Jews sin with the golden calf. God is furious, and we hear about this in the Talmud. He wants to destroy the nation and restart the Jewish people from Moses himself. I mean, he must have been pretty ticked off. Moses wants to appease God. And God says to him, my face will go and I'll give you rest. Don't talk to me right now while I'm furious. Wait until the anger on my face passes, and then I'll give you the relief that you're seeking. Just don't talk to me right now. Give me a couple minutes. To think of God like this is unbelievable. You cannot take this at face value. Fundamental principles of Judaism, that one of the 13 principles of our faith, as delineated by Maimonides, is that God has no physical body and no physical attributes. This is purely anthropomorphically speaking. We do not believe in a God that has an image, in God that has a face. That would be idolatrous. There's actually a note over here about ascribing emotions to God. The description of God as being angry is another one of the anthropomorphisms on this Talmud. Expressions that describe God in human terms only for the purpose of us to be able to relate to them, but not because they're actually objectively so. In truth, however, God is not a human being who feels fury. In fact, it is a fundamental principle that God is not subject to the changing physical or emotional states of mortals or material beings. God is beyond the time and space, beyond descriptions of right and left, front and back. God is unchanging. Whenever these and similar ideas are used to describe him in scripture, they are meant only in a metaphoric sense. The Torah and the prophets chose to speak in a language that people could understand. This is from Maimonides in the Laws of the Foundations of Torah. Thus, when our Talmud suggests that God experiences anger, that cannot be understood in a literal sense. Rather, the term anger is applied to him to describe when his disapproval of human conduct causes God to respond forcefully in a manner which, if done by a human being, we would describe as anger. So we got to take this with a very big grain of salt. Okay. So we're learning about, the first thing we learned so far was that don't try to calm down a person while they're angry. Stay back. Keep a safe distance. In other words, only after my anger passes will I be appeased. By telling this to Moses, God was teaching him not to try to appease someone while he's angry. It is futile to appease an angry person. Conciliatory words will have no effect on him until he calms down. In fact, these words might enrage the angry person even more. They're going to say things that you and they will regret. You're literally pouring fuel on the fire when you try to engage a furious, raging, angry person. Just be quiet. By the way, this is the reason why when you walk into the house of a mourner, you're supposed to be quiet. Don't say anything. It's one of the reasons. Because the various stages of mourning is shock, denial, anger, and remorse. I think it's, or regret. Shock, denial, anger, and regret. And you never know which stage the mourner is in. If they're in a stage of anger, let them vent. Just let them vent. You don't want to start talking because you're going to make it much worse. Gemara's explanation. Okay. Anyways, let's take a look at the comments of Yossi coming. Robberger. I appreciate a blessing from a rabbi, but that's his job. When I give a few dollars to a homeless person and he responds with God bless you, I actually feel something special. I now understand why. Thank you, Rob. I'm glad you appreciate that. That's exactly what we're talking about. Whenever a homeless person would say that to me, I just stop, I focus, and I say amen. You never know. The old saying goes, when you're angry, put your anger in the refrigerator for a few hours and let it cool off. I never heard of that, but that's really nice. Email has made that difficult with the need to respond immediately. Email, you have to respond immediately? I didn't get that memo. I don't know. My email leaves a little to be desired. My ability to respond, I'm trying to work out how to do that. But yeah, I like your point over there, Rob, about putting it in the refrigerator, putting your anger in the refrigerator, let it cool off. That's exactly right. Just chill out, relax. Coming in from, Marty, Rob is behind the times. Text. He's talking about text. That's right. When it comes to email, you can wait a little bit. But texting, you're supposed to respond right away, right? Today with Apple, you know when someone's typing, like in WhatsApp, it says typing, ... Or in Apple, you see those 3 dots that someone's typing. You got to be ready. God forbid you don't respond within the first 25 seconds. It means you're ignoring me, right? That's very pressurizing. A friend of mine said to me, he's like, I miss the days when you used to write a letter, pen and paper. You go to the mailbox, you send it out. It takes like a week to get there. When I get a piece of mail, I got like a week to respond. Misses those days. Terry, God has also been compassionate towards himself and others when he says, give me a minute, because he's choosing not to unleash his anger forcefully, violently. Good lesson for us all, exactly. Now, obviously, God can control his emotion, but it's a message for us. Chill out. When you're angry, don't do anything. It's okay. We're all human. You got angry, just bite your tongue. Don't say anything. Typically, anything you say while you're angry will come back to haunt you. I wonder if you agree with that statement. Anything that you say while you're angry will come back to haunt you in one way, shape, or form. I wonder if you agree with that or not. Rob, you are the exception. In the old days, you would sit down and write a letter. By the time you got to the end of the letter, you had a change of heart. Why am I the exception, Rob? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Why am I the exception? But in the old days, interesting. I'll tell you why. When you write a letter, in the end of the letter, you had a change of heart. Because when you write a letter, you're seething, you're angry, right? Let's say you're writing a letter, official letter, and you put it down on paper, and it feels so good. It's like, I love this. I expressed my frustration. I told him exactly what I wanted to know. And by the time you vented, you're like, okay, I feel better now. I don't need to send it to him. I've actually found that in counseling with some people, that I encourage them to write up the letter, like to their parents, for example. You're so angry with your parents with what they did to you. I encourage them, write it up. Sometimes I'll say, you know what, send it to me. Sometimes send it to me, don't send it to your parents. Because if you send it to your parents, you're going to ruin the relationship forever. But by merely writing it up, they're able to experience that catharsis. They now are able to divest of the load that they've been carrying on their shoulders for the past 50 years. And they're able to move on. Let it go. But don't send it. Exactly. It takes longer to write a letter than to type a text. Yep. Texting is a very, very, very interesting form of communication. It's very much void of the depth of content which is in a letter. We're so blessed by the Rebbe's letters, says Elaine. Good that he lived pre-text. The Rebbe's letters are just magnificent, magnificent. I'm glad you like that therapy technique, Marty. Yeah, absolutely. So I encourage a lot of people to do that, and I find it very, very cathartic. Mickey, old country expression: if you get into a match with a skunk, you end up smelling like one. Mickey, that's your famous quotable quote. Okay, so this is what the Talmud is telling us today. That you shouldn't try to appease a person while they're angry. Very important lesson. And if you're angry, just don't say anything. Bite your tongue. As good as it feels to say what you wanted to say to the people that you love, typically it's going to hurt them in a way that's going to take you so long to repair. What you would say in a fit of rage, it's like being drunk. You become myopic. You only see the here and now. That's what happens when you're drunk. You only see the here and now. You don't think of any consequences in the long term. That's when you're angry. You only see this moment. And when you're drunk, you only see this moment. You say things that have horrible consequences. But for this present moment, it feels good. And that's why you do them. So when you're angry, you lose your ability to see the bigger picture, to see the wider consequences. And that's why the Talmud is telling us, stop. Don't say anything. Don't try to appease the person, because it's not gonna work. It will not work to appease someone while they're angry. The Talmud continues, but is the anger in the presence of the Holy One, blessed be He, is God ever angry? Yes, there is such anger, as the Brisa taught. It says in Tehillim, God is angered every day. What? God becomes angry every day? Listen to this. And how long does God's anger last? Fascinating. It lasts for only a rega. Rega means a moment. Like a rega could mean a minute. You know, in Hebrew today, he said to somebody, rega, relax, give me a minute. Rega. Rega is like one word, which means minutes. But when somebody says to you, rega, it means just a minute, relax, calm down. What are you in such a rush? Right? It means a minute or a moment. Rega. How long is a moment? How long is a rega that is God's anger that lasts every day? It is 158,888 part of an hour. Whoa. So it's 158,888. So 1/58888. That's quite a calculation. So again, it says 1 out of 58,888. That's how long God's anger lasts every day. Now, this is going to be fascinating, by the way, when we get into this and we find out one guy that was able to calculate exactly the moment of God's anger every single day and the devastating consequences of his precise calculations. Because apparently, if you can calculate that time, you can curse anybody. Your words at that time spoken will come true. If you can calculate your your curse during the moment of God's anger, that would come true. So be careful. So again, so how long does that God's anger last? It's 1 rega. How long is a rega? It's 158,888 part of an hour. So again, if a minute is 1/60th of an hour, and a second is 160 times 60, right? Let's see, what's 60 times 60, 3,600 probably, right? So 1/3600th of an hour is a second. This would be 158,888 of an hour. So it's basically like, I don't know, I'm not a mathematician, but I imagine that's like a millisecond. It's probably like some sort of a millisecond. Let me guess 1 second. Yeah, it's like a nanosecond. It's probably like a nanosecond. That's what it is, approximately. If there's any mathematicians here that can tell me how much that is exactly, that would be nice to hear. But let's see. So, let's see. Hi, Sai. Sai Vladimir just joined us. Nice to see you. Good. So, and no creature is able to determine exactly when this moment of God's anger happens every single day, except for one person, and that was one of the most evil people who ever lived. It is Bilam, the wicked, who was hired. He was a prophet equal only to Moses. He was a Gentile prophet whose power of prophecy was equal only to Moses. And he was hired in the Torah by Balak, the king of Moab, to curse the Jews before they entered his land on the way to the promised land. And an entire Torah portion is dedicated to this guy, Balak, the king of Moab, and Bilam, whom he hires to curse the Jews. And every time he tries to curse the Jews, that curse is turned into a blessing. Now, why is it turned into a blessing if Bilam knew when to calculate the moment of God's anger every day? The Gemara explains how the Bryson knows that Bilam was able to know that moment. It is written regarding Bilam that he was someone, the Torah says he was someone who, quote, knows the mind of the Supreme One. Yodea da'at elyon. He knows the mind of the Supreme One. What does that even mean? Now, how could he know the mind of the Supreme One? The Talmud is going to explain he knew how to calculate the time of God's anger. And we're going to get into quite some detail about how you know exactly when is the moment of God's anger. Right? It's going to be a fascinating discussion over here. I don't know if you have time to finish this whole thing. Let me see if I can whiz through it. Let's see if I can do it quickly. So, how could he possibly know God's mind if he didn't even know his own animal's mind? Right? What does it mean he didn't know his own animal's mind? As we'll find out in a moment. So now we're going to be inserting a piece of Talmud from Avodah Zarah, which is a different tractate in Talmud, which tells the story of how Bilam couldn't fathom his animal's mind. Here's the story. What do we mean when we say that Bilam, the one who cursed the Jews, who came to curse the Jews, did not know his animal's mind? We know that when Balak's messengers saw Bilam struggling to make his donkey move on his way to curse the Jews, the donkey of Bilam wasn't moving. They said to him, "Why don't you ride your horse instead, which is a quicker animal than your donkey?" He lied and he said to them, "I usually do ride a horse, but I put my horse in the marshland to graze, so I was forced to ride this she donkey for the first time." He lied. This is Bilam, the Gentile prophet. Immediately, the donkey starts to speak. This is the origin of Shrek, by the way. The donkey starts to talk. It's a story in the Torah. God gave the ability to speak, the power of speech, to this donkey. And the donkey says in the presence of the messengers, is that true? That this is the first time you're riding me? Am I not your she-donkey? Your female donkey? Bilam said back to her, yes, but I've always used you merely for carrying burdens and not for riding. Now, Bilam's in big trouble because Balak, the king, has hired him to come curse the Jews, paying him a lot of money, big contract, government contract. And now Bilam is playing it, mesachekota, like we say in Hebrew. He's playing it because he had a problem. God wasn't allowing him to go. So that's the whole story of the Torah. So basically, he's playing this game and he's trying to feign that he's in control of the situation. Basically, his donkey wasn't cooperating, as we just saw. And now he was caught in a lie when the donkey says, of course I'm your she-donkey, you ride me all the time. So now he has to explain himself. Yeah, I used you for carrying burdens, but not for riding. The donkey contradicted him again in front of the Moabite messengers of the king and said that you have ridden on me before. Of course you did ride on me. Again he lied and he said, yeah, but I only ride on you occasionally. Again the donkey contradicted him and said, you have ridden me all your life until this day. And not only do you ride me on this day, if you want to see what embarrassment is like, this is a moment of great embarrassment. But not only do you ride me in the day, but you also ride me in the night. What does it mean to ride me in the night? You've used me for marital acts at night, for bestiality. The donkey now speaks openly in front of the Moabite messengers, the government contract, carrying this tremendous wealth to pay Bilam to curse the Jews. And now the donkey says, of course you ride me all day, you ride me all night because you're committing acts of bestiality with me. How do we know that she meant this? When she says, all your life until this day, it is written here that the donkey said further in the verse, have I been accustomed, hahaskein hiskanti. That was a very unusual term, that the donkey speaks of a very unusual verb, to say, have I been accustomed? And it is written elsewhere concerning King David, when David is at the very end of his life, and he was very cold, and he needed a warmer. He needed an electric blanket, so what did they do for him? They got him a warmer, a female warmer. It was a woman. And the Torah calls it sochenet, by sitting in his lap or laying with him in the bed. And Bilam, so basically the same word as King David's warmer is the same word as the donkey uses to describe her relationship with Bilam. So we see there's a sexual connotation here with regards to Bilam and his donkey. And again, Bilam had nothing to answer. Bilam now had nothing to answer. And this way, the she-donkey humiliated him in front of Balak's messengers. Point is that we see over here that Bilam, the Gentile prophet who was equal in prophecy only to Moses, which means he was greater than any other Jewish prophet who ever lived, except that he was equal to Moses. This guy was messing around with his donkey. He couldn't even work. He was bested by his donkey in an argument. So here you got a guy that was bested by his donkey. How much more? How could he possibly fathom the mind of God? That's the question of the Talmud. We see that Bilam didn't even know his donkey's mind, as he couldn't know what an argument even with her. Could it possibly be then that he knows the mind of the Supreme One and be able to manipulate God into letting him curse the Jews? What's going on over here? The Talmud's asking a question. Are you guys okay with this Talmud about talking donkeys? I mean, this is actually explicit in the Torah. So if you have a problem with it, let me know. Okay, so we're continuing the story here. If you just joined us, we're studying Talmud and Yaakov, 15th century's work on the collection of the inspirational elements of Talmud. We're learning about God's anger. We said you should never appease someone while they are angry. Chill out, wait for them to put their anger in the refrigerator, and then you should approach them. When you're angry, don't speak, you will regret it. And we learn this from God's anger. When God was angry, he tells Moses to back off until he calms down, and then he will deal with it. So we're speaking now what does it mean that God is angry? How could God be angry? And we're saying, yeah, God is actually angry every single day. For 1 nanosecond every day, God is angry every single day. And there was one person in the history of the world that knew exactly how to calculate the time of God's anger. And that's how he would curse people. Because he would curse them at the moment of God's anger, and that's why it came true. And the question is, how could Bilam know God's mind as the verse states, he knew the Yodea Dat Elyon, he knew the mind of God. If he couldn't even beat his donkey in an argument, how could he possibly know the mind of God? That's the question. Now Talmud answers now below. What then does the verse mean when it says that Bilam knows the mind of the Supreme One? It teaches rather not that he knew the mind of God, because he couldn't possibly fathom the mind of his donkey, never mind the mind of God. Rather, what it means that he knew the mind of God, it means that he knew how to determine the exact moment in the day that the Holy One, blessed be He, becomes angry. And if Bilam would curse someone at that exact moment of divine anger, the curse would take effect. That is what the prophet Micha meant, a Jewish prophet meant when he said to Israel, my people, remember, please, what Balak, king of Moab, plotted, and what Bilam, the son of Beor, answered him. Remember the period from the Shittim to the Gilgal, which is where the story took place in the Torah, so that you may realize the kindness of God. What is the meaning of so that you may realize the kindness of God? This is referring to why the curse of Bilam didn't come true, because God blocked Bilam from having his prophecy come true. Let's see. What kindness is the prophet referring to? Rabbi Elazar said, the Holy One, blessed be He, said here to Israel, realize how many kindnesses I performed for you that I did not become angry at all in those days of the wicked Bilam when he was trying to curse you. Basically, even though God becomes angry every single day by rule, as a rule, for whatever reason, God becomes angry once a day. For a nanosecond, during the days that Bilam was trying to curse the Jews, those days, God put his anger on hold, thus preventing Bilam from being able to curse the Jews. For had I been angry during those days, during the brief moment that Bilam was able to determine, no remnant whatsoever would have remained from the enemies of Israel. It's a euphemism to the Jews. There would have been no remnant of the Jews left, God forbid. Since Bilam's curse at that moment of anger would have taken effect. And this is also the meaning of what Bilam says to Balak. When Bilam fails after, I think 4 or 5 times, he fails at cursing the Jews. Each time he opens his mouth, blessings come out instead of curses. Some of the most beautiful blessings in all of the Torah, by the way, come from the words of Bilam. What he finally says to Balak, he says, how can I curse God? How can I curse? God has not cursed. And how can I anger? God has not become angry. He's basically saying to Balak, I know you hired me to curse the Jews, but I couldn't do it. How can I curse if God has not cursed? How can I anger if God has not become angry? This now makes perfect sense. Since God did not become angry during these days, I don't know why. That's why I couldn't become angry. And since God is not angry, therefore God will not endorse my curse. And that's why I failed. Now the enigmatic verse in the book of Numbers, which is coming up in a few weeks' time in the Torah portion, now it makes sense. What did Bilam mean when he said that he could not curse the Jews because God has not become angry? This teaches that throughout all those days that Bilam tried to curse the Jews, God did not become angry at all, even during the brief moments that he usually does. Folks, are we still okay with this message? I want to make sure that you're not losing me here on the esoteric metaphor here. Andy, it is a problem. It is a problem. He says it is a problem. What is Bilam's great merit to warrant God favoring him with the gift of prophecy that God would talk to him personally? It's a very good question, Andy. Why would God choose Bilam? Remember the principle we learned in Tanya. This equal to that is that God created the world. Your evil inside of you is perfectly matched to your good inside of you. God creates a balanced world to give us freedom of choice. If the Jews were all prosperous and the idolaters were all indared failures, then there would be no freedom of choice. You've got to have prosperous idol worshippers like you have prosperous Jews. You've got to have a very holy, good inclination, which is matched by a very powerful evil inclination. And if there's going to be a prophet of Israel like Moses, it's got to be an equivalent in the nations, in the Gentiles. Like the Talmud says, every creature that is on the face of the earth has its counterpart under the sea. And the Talmud also says in Chulin that every food that the Torah prohibited us from eating, the Torah has allowed us to eat a very similar food. For example, bacon, we're not allowed to eat. Tastes exactly like a certain fish called shibuta. Shibuta is a fish which tastes exactly like bacon, apparently, according to the Talmud. I wouldn't know, but I don't know what a shibuta is, and I never had bacon, but basically it's about equilibrium. So hopefully that answers your question. Back to Talmud. You're going to wrap this up, guys, in the next few moments, okay? The Gemara continues to discuss this moment of God's anger. No, we did that. Sorry, no. The Gemara continues to discuss this moment of God's anger. And how long does this anger last? We said it lasts for a rega. How long is a rega? We said before it's 158,888 of an hour, which is like a nanosecond, right? Reb Avin said, and some say it was Ravina who said, a rega is as long as it takes to say rega. Rega, that sounds like a second. Rega. It's 2 syllables. Rega, 2 syllables. And from where do we know that he's angry for just a rega? Because it says in another verse in Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, chapter 30, verse 6, for his anger endures by the rega. His favor extends for a lifetime. Amazing. It says that in the verse in Psalms. King David knew this. Ki rega be'apoi, chayim b'tzoynai. For his anger endures but a rega, but a moment. His favor extends for a lifetime. It's explicit in the verse. Suddenly the whole Torah started to make sense. That's when you study Talmud. Or if you prefer, you can say that you learn that he's angry for just a rega from another place. A verse in Isaiah 26. Chavi kimat rega ad ya'avor zam. Hide for a rega, for a moment, until anger passes. The Gemara continues to ask. And when does he become angry? Maybe we can find out when it is. During what part of the day is his moment of anger? Abaya said the moment is sometime during the first 3 hours of the day when the comb of a rooster, and this is your sign, folks, for all of you that keep chickens at home. When the comb of the rooster, you know, the comb, the red comb, when it turns white, when it turns pale, and it stands in 1 foot. When the comb of the rooster, this is out there, guys. I know, this is awesome stuff. This is like the old days before the quarantine. This is how we study Talmud in our millionaire mornings. We study like this, and we sit around the table and we fight it all out. I hope my millionaires are still there with me here, enjoying the conversation. This is good stuff. So it's going to get even better. There was a guy that tried this. You'll see a rabbi in the Talmud, he tried to check it out. So if you take a rooster, if you go to Amazon.com right now, you buy yourself a rooster, should arrive within a day or two, Amazon Prime. Rob, are you making this stuff up? Rob, try it out for yourself. Go to Amazon, buy a rooster, should arrive next day delivery, right? Get a rooster, the one with the red comb, right? When the comb turns white in the first 3 hours of the day and the rooster stands in 1 foot, that is the moment of God's anger. It lasts for a nanosecond. I challenge you, Rob. The Talmud carries on. There was a guy that tried this out. Let's see what happens. So that's the moment of God's anger. And apparently this is the secret that Bilam knew. It's out in the open right now. You've got powerful information in front of you guys right now because you now know what Bilam knew. Yodea dat elyon, he knew. How did he translate over here? He knows the mind of the Supreme One. He knows when God is angry. Now you know when God is angry. This is very, very powerful information. Okay, Marty just ordered 2 roosters. One for you, one for Judy. Check it out. See what happens, right? Marty, you keep us informed the next couple of days, right? So the Gemara asks, but there are many times when it stands this way, when the rooster stands on 1 foot with its comb pale. I don't know. The last time I checked roosters, I haven't seen a pale comb. But hey, the Talmud says that many times roosters stand on 1 foot with a comb pale. How then is that a sign for the one moment in the day that God is angry? The Gemara answers, all other times when the rooster stands on 1 foot and the comb turns pale, there are some red streaks left in the comb of the rooster. But at the time of God's anger, however, the entire comb is pale, and then there are no red streaks in it. We took our kids to Orlando for Yeshiva week in January, and we went to this beautiful park. I think it was Animal Kingdom, one of those parks, and we saw the flamingos. So the flamingos, they stand half a day with 1 foot up. They look like they're chilling out, just like 1 foot, like random. Why do they stand with 1 foot up? And we explained to our kids that, for what looks like the knee of the flamingo is actually its ankle. Anything beneath what looks like the knee is its foot. So the flamingo is actually standing like in high heel shoes, basically all day long. And if you stand up, but I hear it's kind of painful for the ankle. So what you want to do is you kick off your high heels and just kind of like when you rip off the mask. When we get home, you rip off the mask. You want to kick off your high heels and you want to let your foot rest, go into a state of rest. That's the reason why the flamingo will like lift up 1 foot, because It doesn't like standing with its foot stretched out all day, like its ankle stretched out. So maybe that's what happens to the chicken as well. I don't know. Could be. So apparently, Marty, when you're watching those, oh, you go one for me. That's awesome. Just drop it, throw it over the fence here to the back of the show so we can watch it. Maybe we'll have a session, Marty. We'll put the chicken in the front of the camera here for 3 hours, and all of us could just watch it. We'll all watch it, and we'll see what happens. Make sure there's no red streaks left in the comb when it turns white for that nanosecond, all right? Rob, my mother wanted a singing canary, so I bought her one. The next day after she was drawing the canary, my mother said the bird only has one leg. I said, did you want a singer or a dancer? Cute. Okay, so this gets better, by the way, as we wrap up the story here. The Gemara tells of a sage who actually tried this, the use of the sign to curse his enemy. There was a certain heretic who was living in the neighborhood of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. This guy, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, was an unbelievable guy. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was one of a few choice individuals who made it into heaven alive. He was such a holy guy that when the angel of death wanted to kill him, wanted to claim him as a client, he was so busy studying Torah. You know, the angel of death can't claim you while you're studying Torah. So Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says to the angel of death says to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, he says, can you stop it already? I got other clients to pick up. Just let me finish my job. Let me take you already. So Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, but I'm afraid. I don't know if I'm going to heaven or hell. I don't know. I don't want to let you take me. So they make a deal where Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says to the angel of death, let me just peek into heaven. I'm going to climb up a ladder, peek over the wall. I want to see what's going on in heaven. And at least I'll have a peek. Even if I land up in purgatory, at least I'll know that I saw heaven. And they make this deal. And the angel of death says, but okay. But if I let you do that, then will you let me take you? He says, yeah. But then the angel of death, the Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says to the angel of death, but while I'm looking over the fence and I'm not studying Torah, you might take me then. I need you to give me your soul, that I can hold on to your soul, that you'll be neutralized while I look over the fence to make sure that you don't take me. Basically, the angel of death must have been very frustrated with this client. So he says, okay, he lets him take the soul. This doesn't make any sense, but whatever, here's the story. Angel of death gives his soul to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. He climbs up this ladder. He looks over the wall of heaven. And guess what? He jumps over the wall holding the soul of the angel of death. I don't know what that means. There was a whole ruckus come up in heaven because this guy broke into heaven. He was like a rioter. He was like a looter. He broke into heaven. He's got the angel of death. The angel of death is now dead. Nobody knows what to do. They had to come up with a whole plan, a whole mediation, Rob Berger, with some whole mediation over there about how to get the angel of death back alive, how we can take care of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi's demands, his ransom hostage situation up in heaven. Hostage taking in heaven. I would make a good movie. Anyways, that's Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi we're about to talk about. Very colorful character. So there was a certain heretic who was living in the neighborhood of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi who used to constantly harass Rabbi Yehoshua by trying to bring proofs from verses in scripture for his heretical ideas. He used to drive him crazy. The rabbi didn't appreciate it. One day Rabbi Yehoshua took a rooster and he tied it between the feet of a bed, just like Marty's going to do. And he stared at it like this to see when the rooster's comb would turn completely pale. He wanted to stare at it so that he could curse this guy. He thought, when that moment of God's anger comes, I will curse the heretic and be rid of him, just like Bilam. Just when that moment came, guess what happened? Rabbi Yehoshua dozed off and he missed the chance to curse the heretic. Rabbi Yehoshua took this as a sign from heaven and he said, I can learn from this that it is not proper to do such a thing. For it is written in Psalms 145 and Tehillim in Ashrei, his mercies are upon all of his creatures. Rachamav al kol ma'asav. God is merciful to all of his creatures. And it is also written in Proverbs, to punish is for the righteous, not good. One final piece here, as we wrap it up, more in this precise moment of God's anger. Brisa taught in the name of Rabbi Meir, when the sun shines in the morning and all the pagan kings of the east and the west place their crowns on their heads and bow to the sun in worship, that is the moment that the Holy One, blessed be He, becomes angry. Perhaps right here, we've got a reason why God is angry. When the kings of the world, the Gentile kings of the world, when they worship the sun, that is the moment of God's anger. This, my friends, is the conclusion of today's very colorful Torah study about anger, God's anger, and the ability to curse your enemies. So let me know what you come up with. I'm going to sign off over here. Thank you for joining me here this morning. It's been a pleasure. Shalom. Oh, I see comments. Hold on. I have a rooster with no feet. What next, Warren? I'm going to let you work that out in Lake whatever in Virginia. And Terry, it would be a chicken meditation. Cute. Anyways, everybody, thank you for joining me this morning. Shalom. Over and out. Oh, don't forget, by the way, today's Wednesday, 11:30. Corey's giving a class on Zoom at jewishgardens.com/Zoom. It's at 11:30 on Tehillim, Psalms, and Hebrew. Also tonight at 8 o'clock, Rabbi Tzimchana is going to be giving a class on Ethics of the Fathers, Chapter 1. It's also on Zoom. Chana's class, Rabbi Tzimchana for men and women, 8 o'clock tonight at jewishgardens.com/Zoom. And one final thing, tomorrow we're doing AMA, Ask Me Anything with the Rabbi and Rebbitzin, 2:45 p.m., YouTube Live and Facebook Live. And we want you to send us your questions so that we know what to talk about. We need your input. We need your questions. So please send us your questions, rabbi@gardens.com. We would love to hear from you. That's tomorrow at 2:45 p.m., youtube.com and facebook.com/Jewish Gardens in both cases. Please share this video, like the video, subscribe to the video. We appreciate you being here with us today. Shalom, over and out.